Alright guys, welcome back to the channel, it's Matty here, and yes, they've actually done it. The entire Space-Time Smackdown A2 card list has been released. So, the new expansion that comes out literally tomorrow, or tonight I guess, at midnight or 1 a.m. for some people, it's been fully leaked, so we have the entire set list. And yes, we've spent a lot of time over the last few days reviewing all of the cards as they've been coming out, and we're going to do that again today. We're going to wrap this up. This is going to be our final, basically, review of all of the cards that we have yet to review for this expansion. We're not going to cover everything in this video. Some of these cards just really aren't worth looking at. They're kind of just flavor cards that get thrown in. Other cards we've already taken a look at, so if you want to go and check out those two videos that we uploaded previously, that, you know, if you haven't seen them yet, go check those out. But let's get right into it. We're going to go ahead and start from the beginning, and we're just going to cover on all of the cards that I think are worth talking about that we have not seen yet. So, starting with the Grass-type Pokemon, we have Blossom here, 130 HP, 2 Grass Energies, 80 damage, retreat cost of 1. That's literally this card. I don't think there's anything special to take a look at there. Let's take a look at Tangrowth, though. So, Tangrowth is really interesting. I actually think this card is decent, so I wanted to at least mention it. It's got 130 HP for a Stage 1 Pokemon, and for 4 energies, we do Mega Drain, 90 damage, and we heal 30 damage from this Pokemon. The reason why I think this Pokemon is actually fairly decent is because with Jungle Totem, we can do Mega Drain for 2 energies, and with Giant Cape, we can bring this non-EX Stage 1 Pokemon up to 150 HP. So, yes, it requires some setup, but if we're playing a purely single prize archetype, maybe along with the Executor from Mythical Island, you know, kind of more of like a budget deck, then yes, 150 HP with Giant Cape, doing 90 damage for 2 energy, healing 30 damage. It's actually not a terrible card. I don't think it's going to be meta per se, but I do think it's worth mentioning. So, next up, let's take a look at Yanmega EX. So I love Yanmega. I was really surprised that this was an EX Pokemon that we're getting. And honestly, this is one of the most interesting EX Pokemon we have ever seen. And the reason I say it's interesting is because we have Air Slash, an attack here, 120 damage, discard a random energy from this Pokemon. But this attack is 3 colorless energies. It is entirely colorless energy. The only time we've seen an attack like this is on colorless Pokemon. So because this is a Grass-type Pokemon and it has full colorless energy attack cost, it's really interesting. So the thing with Yanmega is that it's not a bad card whatsoever. Stage 1 Pokemon, 140 HP, retreat cost of 1. Now, in my opinion, I would have liked to see free retreat on this thing. Yanmega, an extremely fast Pokemon. It gets speed boost in the game, but you know what? That's beside the point. Air Slash, 120, a very solid amount of damage. However, we are discarding a random energy from this Pokemon. But as we've seen in this expansion, and as we will see in some future cards, there is a lot of synergy with discarding and pulling energies out of your discard pile. So this is interesting. It's colorless, so we could run this with electric type Pokemon that have some sort of a discard synergy. But because it's colorless as well, we could actually use this as a tech option in colorless decks. Things like Dialga, you could literally run Yanmega EX with Dialga, and that seems a little bit silly, but when you see how strong some of the new Dark-type EX Pokemon are, which are weak to Grass, this attack actually makes a lot of sense, and playing Yanmega in a deck like that actually makes a lot more sense than you might think. So Yanmega, it's extremely interesting. Like, the card is very simple in its own right, but this is actually a pretty good card. I think it's going to be a really interesting tech inclusion. Again, it's colorless, so you can throw this in any deck, and it's only a Stage 1 Pokemon, so if you wanted to run, 2 Yanmegas in your deck, that's only 4 copies of Pokemon that you throw into your deck to run this Pokemon. And 120 damage is actually pretty significant. A lot of Pokemon are at this 140 HP mark in this new expansion. So 150 damage is still that sweet spot number, but with Giant Cape, a lot of these 140 HP Pokemon go up to, of course, 160 HP. So that's something to keep in mind. Giant Cape is probably going to be really relevant in this metagame. A lot of Pokemon, like I said, with 140 HP. So interesting nonetheless. Yanmega EX, it doesn't seem that great, but again, I do think it actually could see a lot of play in the format, especially if these dark type decks dominate. And actually, we're going to pivot, and I'm going to just jump ahead, and we're going to directly talk about the new Dark-type cards that we've yet to talk about. I know we're jumping around here, so we'll go back up, but let's talk about Darkrai EX. And the reason I wanted to, again, talk about these Dark-type Pokemon is because they're actually weak to Grass. They're exceptionally strong, and that's why I think Yanmega is actually going to be pretty relevant, because it is a direct counter to something like a Darkrai EX and even Weavile EX. So we've taken a look at Weavile before. If you don't know, let's just pull it up real quick so I can show you. So Weavile, 140 HP, Stage 1 Dark-type Pokemon, the first Dark EX Pokemon that we've gotten. Scratching Nails, 30 damage if your opponent's active Pokemon has any damage on it. This attack does 40 more damage. So yes, because we're a Stage 1 Pokemon, because our attack cost is only 1 energy, we are extremely good at attacking on our second turn going first, and this gives us a pretty big advantage, similar to things like the Primate from Mythical Island or Exeggutor EX that have that distinct advantage. Stage 1 Pokemon that have 1 energy and their attack cost are very good, they're very aggressive, very consistent, and they're strong going first, which not a lot of cards are. Now, the reason why I was really high on Weavile was because I assumed that we would probably be getting some way to do damage to our opponent's active Pokemon before we even attack with our first attack with Weavile. And if we had a card like that, which by the way we do with Darkrai, I thought that Weavile was going to be probably the best deck in the game, or one of the best decks in the game. And as it turns out, yes, we get the new Darkrai EX, a basic Dark type EX Pokemon with 140 HP, retreat cost of 2, but we have the ability here, Nightmare Aura. Whenever you attach a dark energy from your energy zone to this Pokemon, deal 20 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So yes, we have a way to consistently do damage, and not only 10, not just 10 damage, but 20 damage. So like a significant amount of chip damage to our opponent's active Pokemon without having to attack. This is extremely good, and it goes absolutely perfectly with Weavile. So the way this is going to work here is because Darkrai is a basic Pokemon, it's going to be consistent, and it's something that we're probably going to start with pretty often. But basically, the way it works here is that, let's just say we're going first. So we can't attach an energy, and we can't attack on our first turn. But let's say we have a Sneasel in the active spot and a Darkrai EX on our bench. Here's what we can do. We can actually just attach to Darkrai on our first turn and do some chip damage to that active Pokemon, so that next turn when we evolve into Weavile, we are able to just attach an energy, that one single energy, and attack for 70 damage on our opponent's active Pokemon immediately from our second turn going first. Now, what we also can do is just attach to the Sneasel on turn 1, and then turn 2, attach to Darkrai EX, and then do that ping damage to our opponent's active Pokemon. It might actually be better to do it that way. That way our opponent can't just retreat out and then, you know, kind of have us as sitting ducks. But 70 damage, but it's plus the 20 from Darkrai. So like literally, like this is basically the same pace as like Exeggutor or Primate, those aggro Primate fighting decks. Instead of doing, you know, 40 damage or 50 damage or maybe 80 damage, now we're doing 90 damage on our first turn, but this is 90 damage every turn. So because Weavile only has 1 energy in its attack cost, that means we can spend basically every other turn attaching energies to Darkrai EX, not only setting it up to be able to come into the active spot and attack with Dark Prism, which is a very consistent 80 damage attack here, but also doing chip damage every turn. We can also bench a second Darkrai EX once we get this Darkrai EX, the first one, fully set up. And basically, it's like every turn we're able to basically do 20 additional damage to our opponent's active Pokemon. Combined with the pace of Weavile EX, it's going to be one of the strongest decks in the game. It's, again, Dark type as well, so you know, Mewtwo decks and just all Psychic decks in general are not going to appreciate it. But we're weak to Grass, which makes things very, very interesting. As we saw, that Yanmega EX is a perfect counter to Darkrai EX and Weavile. That's why we pivoted directly to these two cards. They're both weak to Grass. They both have 140 HP. So unless we have Giant Cape attached or have, you know, blue or some sort of damage mitigation effect in play, Yanmega EX is one-shotting these two Pokemon for 3 colorless energy. So that's why I believe Yanmega is going to be relevant, because these two dark type combination cards are exceptionally good. And the other card that I want to mention to go with probably Weavile and Darkrai is going to be the new Spiritomb. This card seems a little bit underwhelming at first, but it's actually exceptionally strong. Again, we're jumping around a lot here, but let's just follow along here. So Spiritomb, 80 HP basic Pokemon, and it's got 1 colorless energy in its attack cost, Swirling Disaster. It does 10 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon, both the active and the bench. We're also weak to Grass, retreat cost of 1. So the way that this card works is really nicely. So in scenarios maybe where we don't get Darkrai, or we don't have Weavile, what we can do on our first turn if we're attacking, or maybe if we're going second, this could be even a better option, is for us to just attack turn 1 with Swirling Disaster. And this is going to guarantee that no matter what, next turn when we're attacking with Weavile, we're going to be able to do that full 70 damage because we're spreading damage across everything across the board. This also works exceptionally well with the new supporter card, which again, we're going to jump to, is Cyrus. So Cyrus here is similar to Sabrina. Switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon that has any damage on it to the active spot. An exceptionally good card. I think this came out with the leaks, and we talked about it in our previous video, so a very strong card, but it works, again, exceptionally well with, you know, Spiritomb. So I think that that's going to be one of the strongest archetypes in the entire game. The combination of Weavile, Darkrai, Spiritomb, Cyrus, it's just going to be so strong. We also have Honchkrow, which we could include. We've talked about this card as well, but it's not a bad card. The thing is, if we're playing Darkrai EX, basically we only want to run other Pokemon with it that have really low energy attack costs, preferably just 1 energy attack cost, so that we can spend most of our turn attaching to Darkrai, doing that chip damage while also setting it up to attack with it later in the game. So that's why these two cards go together really well. It's going to be it's going to be a very specific combo, but a very strong combo nonetheless. So anyway, I know we skipped, and I apologize for that. Let's take a look at Roserade. What do we have? 100 HP, Poison Whip, 50 damage, 2 energies. It's a stage 1 Pokemon, and our opponent's Pokemon is Poison. Okay, I mean, I don't think it's super great, but it is what it is. Now we have Torterra. So this is something that's very interesting, is that we saw Infernape EX was released, and we talked about it previous video, and we assumed that we would be getting a Torterra EX and also an Empoleon EX, but as we see here, there are no EX versions of these two starter Pokemon. We are only getting just normal single prize holographic cards. So here's Torterra, 160 HP for a non-EX Pokemon's crazy. 2 grass, 2 colorless. Frenzy Plant does 150, but during our next turn, this Pokemon can't use Frenzy Plant. This is a tough attack. It's really a one-hit wonder card. Our retreat cost is 4, so we're not switching in and out of the active spot very easily. Not a great card, but again, it is what it is. We can attack for 2 energies with Jungle Totem, so I guess that's something. Next up, we have Kricketune, Entrancing Melody, 50 damage. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now Confused. Confusion is a new status type that we are getting in this expansion. We saw it teased with the Mischievous that we talked about in the last video. There is a Mismagius, and spoiler, it is an EX card. But yeah, Confusion is a new sort of status condition that's coming to Pokemon TCG Pocket. It's probably going to be similar to Sleep or Paralysis in the sense that it requires a coin flip to stick. However, I believe that it requires a coin flip for it to basically go into effect on your opponent's turn, and if your opponent flips heads or tails rather, then they actually do some sort of damage to themselves. We'll have to see what that damage is. It's probably only 10 damage, but it could be 20. Either way, very interesting. Confusion's going to be very annoying in a lot of different scenarios, especially combined with Rocky Helmet, so we got to keep that in mind as well. But yeah, Kricketune, there it is. And then we also have all of the Wormadam cards. This one is the grass type, 120 HP, stage 1, retreat cost of 2. We have Leaf Cutter, 60 damage, flip a coin if heads, it does 90 more damage for 3 energies. Again, just not a very good card, not something we would really ever choose to play. Now we do have a new Combee here. This is a Call for Family card. So we've seen Call for Family, I believe, before, but this is a new grass type Pokemon that has Call for Family. Allows you to put a random Pokemon from your deck onto your bench. And then we have Vespiquen, which isn't a terrible card. It's fairly consistent. This would be maybe, of course, better if it had 1 energy and its attack cost, but unfortunately, it going first, we just can't attack on our second turn with Vespiquen. So I don't think it's that good, but again, you know, more flavor cards. Let's take a look at Carnivine. It's a basic 90 HP grass type Pokemon, and we have Flog for 3 energies, 40 damage, flip a coin if heads, it does 50 more damage. Now, again, a lot of coin flip cards. These cards are inconsistent, and they're in general just not very strong. And we have 3 energies in our attack cost, so I think we would still need 2 energies to attack even with Jungle Totem, so it is what it is. We've already took a look at Leafeon. Not a bad card. In fact, I think it's better than those other grass type Pokemon that we've talked about, but we already talked about in a previous video. Let's take a look at Rotom Mo. So we have all of the different Rotom forms in this expansion, and they're all kind of interesting. So we've got Mo Rotom here, 80 HP basic grass type Pokemon. We have Energy Cutoff, 30 damage, flip a coin if heads, discard a random energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. So unfortunately, this has an attack cost of 2. If it had an attack cost of 1, it would actually be a very, very good card early in the game, but unfortunately it requires 2 energies to attack. I just don't necessarily see this card really seeing play. But lastly, for the grass type Pokemon, we have Shaymin, which is a new really interesting card here. So 60 HP basic Pokemon, and it has the ability here, Fragrant Flower Garden. So once during your turn, you may heal 10 damage from each of your Pokemon. So this is really interesting. We're getting more healing support for grass types that already have Ericas, they already have Butterfree, and of course we already have Giant Cape now coming that increases our HP even more so. We also have Potion, which we can play in the deck. So grass type decks like Executor, paired with Shaymin, paired with Ericas, maybe paired with Giant Cape, maybe even paired with Butterfree, but of course here Shaymin, are going to be very, very interesting decks. It's a basic Pokemon, so again, it's just really easy to get onto our board. This ability does stack. It doesn't say, it doesn't limit us to using one Shaymin ability per turn. So we can use Flagrant Flower Garden twice if we have 2 Shaymins on our bench. And that is going to be 20 additional damage healing every turn. We can also do Flop for 30 damage. But a very interesting card. Again, I think that basically healing stall grass stacks might actually be a little bit better now with some additional support for Shaymin and Giant Cape. I think that combination could make Executor that much better. We'll have to see what the format really pans up to being, but again, if the dark type decks end up becoming one of the best decks in the format, Executor stall decks with all of the healing cards could be a really, really important archetype in the format still. We also still have Celebi and Jungle Totem and all of the other grass type support cards. So Shaymin, really not that bad. I actually really like it. We have a new Magmar here. Stoke, take a fire energy from your energy zone and attach it to this Pokemon. This card is meant to set up Magmortar here, which is a new stage 1 130 HP holographic card. 3 retreat costs in its so 3 energies in its retreat cost rather. And we have Bursting Inferno, 4 fire energies, 100 damage. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now Burn. So I believe Burn is also a new status condition that we're getting. It's going to be very similar to Poison in the sense of how that works. I think it might, it's probably very similar. I don't know. I forget the exact details, but yes, we are getting Burn as well as a static condition in the set. Magmortar is interesting. I mean, I don't know. It's got 130 HP, so a lot of Pokemon are KOing it, and it requires 4 energies in its attack cost. So I don't know. I don't think it's terrible, but it's just kind of another kind of flavor card thrown in. We have Magcargo, Searing Flame, 30 damage. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now burned again. Some more burn cards. We could have some further burn synergy. Let's take a look here. But for most of these cards, it just doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense to play them. It's just they're not necessarily that good. We've already taken a look at Infernape EX, and here is Heat Rotom, 80 HP, Heat Breath, 30 damage plus flip a coin of heads. It does 30 more damage. So unfortunately, like we haven't seen any cards that do increased damage to burned opponents. That would make more sense to play things like Magmortar or Magcargo. Maybe we'll see some more later on. Maybe we'll see like some Facade users or something. I don't know. None of these fire cards really stand out to me. There's not a lot of them either, so this is definitely not a fire-based set. So if you're a fire type enjoyer, unfortunately, there's not much else going on. Infernape is Infernape, but again, there's not really a lot of extra support cards to be played with fire. So I don't think it's going to be changing very much. Yes, you could just play Infernape with Moltres and Arcanine. I think that could be a pretty decent tempo deck. You could even play it maybe with Charizard. I don't know. We'll have to see, but I think fire decks are still just going to be Moltres decks, maybe just with Infernape thrown in, maybe. I don't know. We'll have to see, but fire is what it is. Not much else we can really say about it. It's like not the most impressive, display of cards coming in this expansion, unfortunately. So if you're a fire type deck enjoyer, I apologize. But we have Mamoswine here, another holographic card, 160 HP stage 2 Pokemon. Retreat cost of 4. 4 energies in its attack cost, Frosty, Flattening, 120 damage. But we take 30 less damage from fire type or water type Pokemon with the Thick Fat ability. This card exists, and I don't know. We're not going to play it, There's just better options. I'm sorry, Mamoswine. It's interesting, though, that Mamoswine is a water Pokemon, in my opinion. Maybe we've seen that before, but I feel like typically it's like fighting or ground type Pokemon. We also have Regice here, a basic water type Pokemon here, non-EX, 110 HP, Crystal Body ability, prevent all effects of attacks used by your opponent's Pokemon done to this Pokemon, and Frost Smash, 20 or 50 damage for 2 water energies. This card is interesting. The art is cool, but prevent all effects of attacks used by your opponent's Pokemon. So that means like not damage. Damage is not an effect, so you still take damage from your opponent's active Pokemon, but you wouldn't get like paralyzed or confused or burned or anything like that. So it's not terrible, but I don't know. A lot of the basic Pokemon like this, we got to think about the scenarios in which we would play this card, and it just doesn't necessarily make sense because we can't use it super early in the game because it has 2 energies in its attack cost. It only has 110 HP and only does 50 damage. So typically Pokemon like this only see play if they have really strong abilities. This ability is okay, but it's not that strong. Or if it has really fast-paced, aggressive damage attacks, and this doesn't have that aggressive of an attack. Sure, you can Misty to it, but I don't know. It's an interesting card, but I don't think it's necessarily that good. And then we have Empoleon, similar to Torterra, not an EX Pokemon, but it is a holographic card here. Stage 2, 150 HP. Aqua Jet, 80 damage, but it also does 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. This is actually not that bad. We're seeing a lot of bench sniping or bench damage cards in the water type. Unfortunately, it's a stage 2 Pokemon, so it's a little bit awkward to set up. But it could actually be really useful. Cards like this are a lot better than you think they are because they allow you to take 2 KOs in 1 attack. So yes, I mean, there's other better options. There's better water type cards, but I mean, in a vacuum, this card isn't terrible, but we're not going to choose to play Empoleon over Palkia or Articuno or cards like that, unfortunately. So I don't think so, at least. But yeah, shout out to Empoleon. Very cool card. Floatzel, 90 HP, we have Jet Screw, 30 damage, flip a coin if heads, it does 30 more damage. So this is actually fairly interesting as far as like aggro water type cards go. This isn't terrible. The ability to do 60 damage on our second turn going first is somewhat substantial. It's not as good as Primeape, which does 50 every turn. So I don't think this card is super relevant, but again, you got to keep in mind that cards of that type are somewhat relevant because they're fast-paced in nature. Let's take a look at Gastrodon. Am I missing anything in any of these pre-evolutions? I don't think so. No. Let's take a look at Gastrodon. So we have Muddy Water, 120 HP, stage 1. Muddy Water, this attack also does 20 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Like I said, water type is very, very commonly becoming a bench attack Pokemon, as well as sort of a damage spread archetype, like the water typing is. So that's something to keep in mind. It's definitely very, very interesting. Okay, and we have a new Finneon and Lumineon card. This Finneon reads here, Elegant Swim, 10 damage, flip a coin if heads during your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage and effects done to this Pokemon. So it's actually a pretty strong effect here. But overall, let's see what Lumineon does. The other Lumineon did 50 damage to any one of your opponent's Pokemon for 2 energies. But this Lumineon here is just what we were talking about, similar to Floatzel. It does 50 damage for 1 energy. This card is actually really relevant. We've seen how good Primeape can be. Now, I think Primeape's going to be better this expansion because we have Lucario, but cards like this are actually like really, really quite good. The way I think about a card like this is in a scenario maybe with Palkia. You could play this in a Palkia deck. In a scenario where from our second turn going first, we're able to do consistent chip damage here, 90 HP, 50 damage. So if we get a couple waterfalls off with Lumineon, we live for a couple turns, that's a lot of important chip damage to the active spot. Palkia can then come in later and, you know, play Sabrina and kind of finish off a KO on an already damaged Pokemon on their bench while KOing their active Pokemon. So a card like this does actually have some sort of relevance. It's very consistent. It's very low cost. And again, it's only a stage 1 Pokemon. So I actually think this Lumineon is good, similar to how Primeape is good. They're basically the exact same card from Mythical Island, and Primeape is indeed pretty good. Let's take a look at Snover. If your opponent's active Pokemon is a fighting Pokemon, this attack does 30 more damage. So that is interesting. 40 damage for 1 energy on a basic Pokemon. Not too bad, honestly, but it's again pretty situational. Very interesting ability nonetheless. And then we have Obamas now, 124 energies, 140 HP. Again, it is what it is, but we're just not, like, we're not playing Obama Snow over other options. I'm sorry. So many cards in Pocket are just sort of flavor cards, and they're just really not worth mentioning. But, you know what? It is what it is, right? We have Glaceon, similar to Leafeon, which we've taken a look at before. We do Ice Beam, 60 damage, flip a coin. If heads, our opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. So for 2 water energies on a stage 1 Pokemon, we can do some decent chip damage. This is kind of an in-between version, or I guess a little bit more of a consistent version of the Articuno from Genetic Apex, where Articuno was a basic Pokemon, but it required 3 energies in its attack cost. Now we're a stage 1 Pokemon with 2 energies in its attack cost. So very similar to that Articuno card, but paralysis can be pretty annoying, especially combined with, you know, the Hypno from Genetic Apex that can put your opponent's Pokemon to sleep via coin flip. So we got to keep that in mind. Okay, so next up we have Rotom Wash here. So 80 HP, basic, Wave Splash, 1 water energy, 30 damage. So yes, you might be thinking like, why would I play Rotom Wash if we can just play Palkia, which has 150 HP and does the same thing? Well, technically speaking, 2 Rotom Washes, which equate to the same amount of points as 1 Palkia, has more HP. It's got 160 HP. So, I mean, keep in mind, like, this is a very fast-paced card. It's a very aggressive card, but I think in most scenarios, we would rather play something like Farfetch'd or even Kangaskhan, which has more HP and can do more damage, even though it's less consistent and it's colorless. So, not a great card, but again, you know, it is what it is. It can be somewhat effective because it's so fast-paced. And we have Frost Rotom, 80 HP, Blizzard, 30 damage, 2 water energies on a basic Pokemon. And then this attack also does 10 damage to each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. Some more damage spread. Not a bad, actually, Pokemon here. I kind of like it. It could be a very interesting one-of inclusion in other water-type decks. Okay, so we've seen Palkia. We've talked about Manaphy, so we're going to skip over those again. if you want to go check it out, my previous two videos where I talk about the other cards here, definitely go check that out. We've talked about Magnezone. There is a new Electrode, which again is very similar here, 50 damage, 1 electric energy, so very fast paced, very aggressive. This could make actually for a very good inclusion in a lot of electric type decks. Again, electric type is very fast paced, and this is an extremely fast paced card, so I actually do quite like that Electrode. I like it quite a bit. We're also getting a new Electabuzz, which again is similar to the Magmar. Take 1 electric energy from your energy zone and attach it to this Pokemon, and then again it evolves into Electivire, which I think we've already seen before. Yeah, we've talked about this. 40 damage, does 80 more if you have 4 energies attached to it. Not bad. The archetype between Electivire and Volkner and Luxray, which we'll see in a little bit, or Magnezone, I think, is just really, really interesting. So let's take a look at the Shinx line. This is the first time we're taking a look at it. We have Hype, flip a coin if heads, prevent all damage done from attacks to this Pokemon. And then we can attack on Curve into Luxio for 40 damage for 2 energies. And then now, lastly, we can go into Luxray, which stage 2, 130 HP, free retreat cost on Luxray, which is very interesting. It's not even that fast of a Pokemon in the games, but we have Bolt, discard all lightning energies from this Pokemon. This attack does 120 damage to any one of your opponent's Pokemon. That's actually really good. This is actually a crazy card, kind of a checkmate card, basically. You don't have to play Sabrina, you don't have to play Cyrus. We can just say, hey, listen, I'm literally just gonna one-hit KO one of your bench Pokemon for game. I don't even care what's in the active spot. So it's actually really, really interesting. And again, I believe Volkner works with Luxray. We'll have to check. Let me scroll down here so we can take a look at Volkner to see which Pokemon this works with. Yeah, so Electivire and or Luxray. So we can kind of get this Luxray set up in like 1 turn. So it's going to be a really interesting kind of checkmate option. 122 a bench Pokemon is absolutely crazy. So I really do like Luxray, and again, I think that the Luxray Electivire sort of archetype could be pretty decent. It could be one of the new best single prize archetypes in the game. We'll have to take a look and see how things pan out there. We've already talked about Pachirisu, we've already talked about Rotom, Togekiss we've already talked about, and yes, let's get into Mismagius. So this card is actually really, really interesting, and I quite like this card. Stage 1 Pokemon, 140 HP. And we have the attack here. Magical Delusion does 70 damage for 2 psychic energies. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused. So again, Confusion's going to be really good because it does potentially does additional chip damage to your opponent's active Pokemon if they don't break out of their confusion. This is a very consistent card. Stage 1 Pokemon, 2 energies in its attack cost. It is weak to Dark. There are some good Dark type cards as we've seen here, but it also has the 140 damage 140 HP. So that is just below kind of that threshold. With Giant Cape, we go up to 160. That's a pretty good number. We're allowed to live in a lot of different scenarios. But I think, honestly, Mismagius might be best with Rocky Helmet. Basically, the combination of Confusion and Rocky Helmet should allow for a lot of chip damage. And I believe that it's going to be very annoying in a variety of different scenarios. Unless we're getting one-hit KO'd, which, again, does happen for sure. But you know, it's a very consistent card. It doesn't require a lot of energies. This could be a good inclusion in Mewtwo decks. We could see a Mismagius Mewtwo deck, but the thing is, like, it's interesting because, like, the reason I think Starmie is so good is because, and I'm comparing this card to Starmie, is because it has free retreat, but also the 2 energies in Starmie's attack cost is a little bit better because we also can just flip 1 coin, 1 heads on Misty's pretty often, and just find ourselves basically able to attack a lot more fast-paced and a lot more early with Starmie than we otherwise would have. So I think Misty is a big reason why Starmie is so good. Also, their free retreat. So Mismagius is a good card. There is some additional support here. Confusion could be good. Again, I think Rocky Helmet could be good as well. But overall, I don't know. Like, we're not often going to be able to attack on our second turn. Like, here's the thing, right? If we're going second, on our second turn, we can attack with Mismagius. But if we're going first, we can't attack with Mismagius until our 3rd turn. And that is generally not very good. So we kind of want to pair Mismagius with another card that basically has low energy attack cost and can attack early in the game. So we'll have to see if there's any inclusions for this. It could be good to play with like Sigilyph or something like that. I'm not sure. It's a very interesting card, but again, going first could be really awkward with it because we don't have a way to accelerate energies to it very, very early. Let's take a look at the new Dusknoir card with Shadow Void. This card is super, super interesting. Again, I think it's good, but I don't know how, I don't know how relevant it's going to be. So as often as you would like during your turn, you may move one of your, choose one of your Pokemon that has any damage onto it and move all of its damage to this Pokemon. So basically, you can heal up one of your Pokemon by moving that damage to Dusknoir. Now, unfortunately, we have 130 HP. A lot of Pokemon are hitting for above that number. Yes, we could attach Giant Cape to Dusknoir, bring it up to 150, and as long as, you know, our opponent attacked us for less than 150 HP, we can basically full heal that Pokemon in the active spot by moving all of its damage to Dusknoir, and I think that is actually quite good. I think this card could be relevant. Unfortunately, this effect doesn't come into play until much later in the game because we are a Stage 2 Pokemon. However, we are a Psychic Pokemon, so we can use Mythical Slab to, you know, get this Pokemon set up that much earlier. It's interesting. I think it could be extremely good in particular archetypes, maybe even Executor. Like, again, like you could pair this with Shaymin and other healing cards. Like, I don't know. Like, there's some really interesting shenanigans that this Dusknoir card could work with. Like, it's hard to say how things are going to match up. We're going to have to build the decks. We're going to have to test them all out and see how the meta develops. Dusknoir is interesting. It could be like a really cool card that just never sees play. Or it could see play in like 1 or 2 very specific decks that are absolutely top tier meta. We'll have to see. I like this card. I really do. I think it's really, really good, but we'll have to see just how good it is in the metagame. We also have Drifblim, or Drifblim rather. Again, Stage 1 Pokemon, 2 energy and its attack cost, which is just a little bit awkward. 100 HP, 60 damage, I think, again, just a flavor card. Little unfortunate, but yeah, it's never really going to see play. However, let's take a look at the Lake Spirit Trio Pokemon. That is Uxie, Mesprit, and Azelf. This is its own single prize archetype. It's its own type of deck, and it is actually a lot more interesting than you might think. So let's take a look here. Uxie, 70 HP here, and they're all basic Pokemon, and it's got Mind Boost. For 1, Psychic Energy does 20 damage, and take an energy from your energy zone and attach it to Mesprit or Azelf on your bench, basically. So you can choose which one you want to attach it to and accelerate energies to that Pokemon. This would be the lead off in the combination. We also have Azelf here, or Azelf, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but we have Psychic Arrow, and this is just 1 energy and its attack cost. We can do 20 damage to one of our opponent's Pokemon. Kind of a bench sniping option there. And then Mesprit, so for 3 energies, we do Supreme Blast. This is a 160 damage, guys. Let me just talk to, like, first of all, let me just explain this to you here. Mesprit is a basic Pokemon with 3 energies and its attack cost doing 160 damage. This might be like literally the strongest attack in the game combined with, you know, being on a basic Pokemon and for only 3 energies. The downside here is that we need Uxie and Azelf on our bench and you discard all energies from this Pokemon. So it's definitely balanced, but 160 is enough to KO a lot of Pokemon in the game. And again, Uxie can, you know, accelerate energies to Mesprit. We can run 2 copies of all of these Pokemon. We can play Pokeball. We can play Research. There's also a new card that's going to allow us to find Pokemon in our deck that we'll talk about in a little bit. So this archetype is actually really, really interesting. It's a little bit underwhelming unless we go into the Mesprit, like I said. But these 3 cards go together in a really interesting way, and it's going to be its own archetype. And I think, again, we'll have to see how consistent it is and how it all kind of shapes up when we test it and we kind of build these decks and actually try it for ourselves. But very, very cool. Like, it's going to be its own archetype, and it could actually be pretty good. Unfortunately, though, all of these Pokemon have low HP, so you know, some of those aggressive, fast-paced Dark-type decks like Weavile and Darkrai are very much going to just farm these cards. So that is unfortunate for sure. But we also have Giritina, basic 120 HP Psychic Pokemon, and we have Levitate. If this Pokemon has any energy attached to it, it has no retreat cost, and that's actually pretty cool. It can be a really decent pivot late in the game, especially 120 HP. All we have to do is attach an energy, and we can retreat for free with this thing. That's honestly kind of cool. I like it. It only does 70 damage for 3 energies with Spooky Shots. So like, I don't think there's really enough room or justification to play this in really most Psychic type decks, but it is a really interesting wall, like I said, and you can retreat out for free, maybe use it later because we're not discarding the energy that we would attach to it to retreat. So it's interesting. It could, you know, kind of see play. The art on it is absolutely incredible though. Yeah, anyway, Giratina, very interesting. We've already taken a look rather at Cresselia, so let's move on here. We're at 33 minutes. We're going to start moving a little bit quicker. I always say that, but here we go. Rhyperior, 160 HP, Stage 2 Pokemon. We have Mountain Swing, 150 for 4 fighting energies. Discard the top 3 cards of your deck. This card is a no-no. We're not going to play this card. It takes too long to set up, too much downside. 150 HP, you're also not even KOing a lot of Pokemon because the Giant Cape exists. Sorry, Rhyperior. Also, how are we getting 4 fighting energies onto Rhyperior? That is a crazy, crazy card. We have Gliscor here. So here is another Stage 1 Pokemon with 1 energy in its attack cost. Now we have 100 HP. That's a pretty significant amount. Acrobatics, 20 damage plus flip 2 coins. It does 20 more damage for each heads. So pretty inconsistent damage-wise, but again, I do think we would rather play Primeape, but again, it's not a terrible card because again, 1 energy and its attack cost. That's a stage 1 Pokemon, but we're probably going to choose to play Primeape and just do 50 damage every turn. There's no reason to play Glaceon. We also have Hitmontop. Unfortunately, also a pretty irrelevant card here. 2 energies, 50 damage, 80 HP. We would much rather play Hitmontop or Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee. They're both better because you can use them on turn 1. And unfortunately for Hitmontop, we're not able to do that. Sorry, Hitmontop, just not super relevant. Here's Regirock, 120 HP. We have Exoskeleton, takes 20 less damage from attacks. And yes, 100 HP or 100 damage attack for Boulder Crush for energies. Again, how are we getting 4 energies on this Pokemon? Why would we play this card? 100 damage is not taking any KOs. Even though we're taking 20 less damage from attacks, that's 148 basically effective HP. Still very easily getting KO'd. Regirock, not a good card. We're not going to play it. Now we have Rampardos, which is very funny. We're doing 130 damage for 1 energy, which is very cool. 150 HP. It is a stage 2 fossil Pokemon. And if your opponent is knocked out by damage from this attack, we also do 50 damage to ourselves. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know how I feel about this card either. With Lucario, this damage could go up pretty significantly. Technically, we could hit for 150, maybe even 170 if we had 2 Lucarios. You know, but we're a stage 2 Pokemon, so it's just we're taking up a lot of space in our deck to play Rampardos, to probably only attack for 1 turn and then get revenge KO'd. So yes, I don't think it's great, but technically it's crazy. Doing 130 damage for 1 energy is actually pretty crazy. Here's the fighting type Wormadam. And we have 120 HP, Land Crush. It's a stage 1 Pokemon, 70 damage for 3 energies. Again, very lackluster, another fill-in card. I don't even know why I keep mentioning these cards. Hippowdon, let's take a look at it. 140 HP, stage 1. Again, 4 fighting energies and its attack cost doing 120 damage. Retreat cost of 4, so that's tough. Again, I ask you, how are we getting 4 energies on Hippowdon? And why are we putting 4 energies on Hippowdon? Doesn't really make sense to me. So I don't think it's that good of a card. Yeah, we're going to say that we've said that quite a bit here. We've already talked about Gallade. We've talked about Honchkrow. In fact, we talked about really all of these Pokemon. Let's take a look at Mightyena. Again, stage 1 Pokemon, 2 energies and its attack cost, and we're only doing 60 damage, 90 HP. That is one of the worst cards I've seen in a very long time. What about Skuntank? 100 HP here, Poison Gas, 50 damage, Dark Colorless. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned. Okay, again, but 2 energies in our attack cost. The reason I keep saying that these stage 1 Pokemon with 2 energies in their attack cost aren't good is because they're really not good. If we're going first, we literally can't use this Pokemon until our 3rd turn. So like that in its own right really means that these cards, that specific type of card shouldn't really be worth playing. But I guess we'll have to see. I don't know. I don't know. I think so many of these cards are just fill-in cards. We've already talked about a lot of the best cards. Here is Drapion, stage 1, 120 HP. We have Cross Poison, does 40 damage, but you flip 4 coins, and this attack does 40 damage for each heads. If at least 2 of those coin flips are heads, so 50-50, then your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned. Okay, so we have the potential to do 80 damage in poison, or we could literally do 160 damage, which is actually kind of crazy if you think about it, but kind of a high roller card. Kind of a meme card as well. I don't think Drapion's going to see that much play. 3 energies is just kind of a lot. We don't have a lot of energy. We don't have really any dark type energy acceleration, so kind of unfortunate for Drapion. And then we have Toxicroak, 90 HP, retreat cost of 2, stage 1. We have Group Beatdown, 40 damage, flip a coin for each Pokemon you have in play. So that could be 4 total cards. And then now we're doing 40 damage for each heads. This is actually not that bad. Potentially doing 160 damage for 2 energies on a stage 1 Pokemon is crazy. Again, it's 2 energies, it's attack cost, so we can't use this on our 2nd turn going first. We have to go wait till our 3rd turn. If we're going 2nd, we can. So that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. This could be a really interesting meme card. Being able to one-shot almost anything in the game for 2 energies on a stage 1 Pokemon is kind of crazy, but that would be a very interesting high roller card. We've taken a look at both Darkrai's, of course, and let's take a look at Skarmory. Okay, so this card we saw previously, but it was a promo card. We didn't know if we would be getting it in the base Spacetime Smackdown booster packs. Skarmory might be the new best card in the game. I actually mean this. So 80 HP, basic metal type Pokemon, metal arms, 1 metal energy, retreat cost of 1, 20 damage. If this Pokemon has a tool card attached to it, it does 30 more damage. So sure, we have plenty of tool cards. We can run 6 total in our deck. This is going to be one of the best leadoff options. In fact, I think that this card is going to be more impactful. In fact, it might even be a better card than Dialga. That might sound blasphemy here, but 50 damage on your first turn is ridiculous, especially considering that if we get Giant Cape on this thing, we actually have 100 HP and we're doing 50 damage for 1 energy on our first turn. The pace and the damage output that we can do with Skarmory is unmatched in the game. It literally is unmatched. This card absolutely crazy. I love Skarmory. We're probably going to include it in basically any metal type deck because it's going to make those decks so much faster paced and so much better. But yeah, so Skarmory is coming in the base set. We have Registeel, again, basic 3 energies, 90 damage, 110 HP. Probably not going to choose to play it. It's a little bit more underwhelming. I mean, I guess it's not terrible because, again, we do have Dialga, so we can accelerate metal energies to any of these Pokemon. We have to keep that in mind. Let's take a look at Bastiodon, another stage 2 fossil type Pokemon. It is metal type, 160 HP. Ability Guarded Grill. If any of the damage is done to this Pokemon by attacks, flip a coin of heads. This Pokemon takes 100 less damage from that attack. Okay, so we have effectively, like, we're gonna flip a coin of heads. Effectively, we have 260 HP, but this effect is actually stronger than you would think because basically any attack that does 100 HP or less, if we flip heads when we get attacked, it just does like nothing. So it's better than effective HP or increasing your HP in some ways because we never even take any damage. So that's pretty crazy here. It's a stage 2 Pokemon, so it's going to be a little bit awkward to set up. We also have a retreat cost of 4, so this thing is staying in the active when it is in the active, and we do 80 damage for 3 energy. So the attack there is pretty you know, again, it's not super substantial. If we flip Tails, we're getting KO'd by an Infernape, so keep that in mind. I don't think it's great. In fact, I was actually really disappointed, I will say. This is all we have for Metal-type Pokemon. We have Dialga EX, but I was really hoping that we would get maybe another, you know, Metal or Steel-type EX Pokemon in this set to go with Dialga. But unfortunately, no, we don't. There's nothing in here that's another Steel-type Pokemon. Even Weavile and Darkrai have had a combination, so we have 2 Dark-type EX Pokemon. But unfortunately, Dialga does not get a partner Pokemon to go with it. Actually, before we look at Bronzong, let's take a look at Wormadam. So Wormadam here, 110 HP, Iron Head, 50 damage, flip a coin until you get heads. This attack does 30 more damage for each heads. Again, kind of a meme card here, but again, we can set this thing up in 1 turn with Dialga. So it's actually a lot better than you think it is. Also, like, RNG is a thing, so we could literally do like 600 damage with Wormadam if we just flip a bunch of coins in a row. That's hilarious to me. 2 energies and the potential to 1-hit KO anything in the game is really funny. It's inconsistent. Most of the time we're only doing, you know, 50, 70, maybe 90 damage for this Pokemon, but it has that potential, similar to the Eevee from Mythical Island. So I really like this card. I don't think it's going to be that good, but it is really funny. Unfortunately, like I said, just not a lot of great Pokemon to be paired here, at least metal Pokemon to pair it with Dialga. So we have Bronzong here. It's not an EX Pokemon. I was really hoping Bronzong would be an EX Pokemon, but it's not. Stage 1, 120 HP. We have Guard Press. Only does 60 damage for 3 energies, but during our opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 20 less damage from attacks. Spoiler here, this card is awful. This is probably one of the worst cards I've ever seen in my life. I'm not even going to say another word about that Bronzong. I am so disappointed in that card. Stage 1, Probopass, 130 HP, triple nose, 4 energies in its attack cost. Again, we can get this set up with Dialga pretty effectively. 30 damage plus flip 3 coins. It does 50 more damage for each heads. So many coin flip cards in this format. I mean, are we really going to be playing just coin flip simulator? I don't think so. There's a lot of cards that don't flip coins and that are good, so why would we be flipping coins to do damage? What if we flip no heads and we do 30 damage for 4 energies? That's awful. That is terrible. Yes, technically we can do 180 damage, so I don't know. I love it. I hate it at the same time. Yeah, you can kind of feel my frustration a little bit. I think the set is extremely good, but in just ways that I necessarily did not expect it to be. So sorry, Dialga. I think your best partner in this expansion is going to be Licky, which is actually pretty fun and a pretty cool card. But let's take a look at Heatran. Actually not a bad card whatsoever. Basic Pokemon, 120 HP, 3 metal energies, so basically, like, we can set this up with 1 attack from Dialga and a manual attachment. We're doing 110 HP, or damage rather, with this attack, and we do 20 damage to ourselves. So we don't have great staying power. We're gonna get KO'd very easily. Again, why no Heatran EX? We could have seen a Heatran EX. It could have been broken. Unfortunately, it's not. We just have this card, which is okay. It's not great, but it's pretty okay. Let's take a look at Licky EX, which actually, low-key, unironically, might be the best Pokemon for us to pair with Dialga EX. It's a stage 1 colorless EX Pokemon, 160 HP, and it's got a retreat cost of 4. So again, we're not getting out of the active spot. It's when we're in, we're in. But 160 plus Giant Cape is 180. That's a lot of HP for a stage 1 Pokemon. Again, very similar to Executor from its HP and stage 1 perspective, but it's colorless. And we have Licking Fury, 4 colorless energies, 100 damage plus. Flip a coin until you get tails. This attack does 40 more damage for each heads. Yeah. So again, more coin flips. It's a little bit unfortunate, but this is generally a really strong card. 4 energies and its attack cost seems like a lot, but like I said, we can get this thing kind of set up and ready very easily with Dialga. So in a scenario where we lead off with Dialga and we kind of just attack until, we set up our Licky, we attach a Giant Cape to it, and now we're doing at minimum 100 damage every turn, no drawbacks, with 180 HP. Yes, we're weak to fighting type, but it is what it is. So I actually, I don't think Licky's that bad. In fact, it might literally be, the best card to play with Dialga. You gotta also think, it's only a stage 1 Pokemon. So 4 cards in your deck would be Lickitung and Licky. 2 cards would be Dialga EX, so that's only 6 cards in your deck. You could also still throw in something like a Tauros or a Mew EX, and then that's it. That's only 8 cards in your deck. So there's plenty of room in here, so it's not taking up a ton of room in your deck. Again, it has a lot of HP, so it's going to be good in those matchups, basically, where we want to live attacks from strong Pokemon that are also setting up in the late game. And Giant Cape can certainly do that. Maybe we just tech in Skarmory as well, so we can have, because if we're also running tool cards, I'm just kind of theory crafting here, but in general, I actually think Licky's really good, and it's probably going to see quite a bit of play with Dialga. It's a really interesting combination that I was not expecting, but there it is. Licky EX. Very, very cool. Let's take a look at Ambipom. 90 HP. It is a stage 1 Pokemon with 1 energy in its attack cost, and it's a colorless, which is cool. Double hit, 40 damage, flip 2 coins, it does 40 damage for each head. So unfortunately, we could do 80 damage, but we also could do 0 damage. So on average, we're doing 40, so that's cool. It's again worse than still a lot of stage 1 Pokemon for 1 energy attack cost, but it is colorless, so technically if we wanted to run an aggro deck, we have this card that we can tech into basically any other archetype. So that is somewhat interesting, at least for sure. Let's take a look at Starly. Before doing damage, discard all Pokemon tool cards from your opponent's active Pokemon. This is I believe, the only way that we can discard tool cards from any of our opponent's Pokemon in the game right now. I'm pretty sure that's it. That's all we have, which is very, very interesting. We have taken a look at Bidoof before and Staraptor, so let's not take a look at those cards. What about Barrel here? 110 HP, 60 damage, rolling tackle for 2 colorless energies. So, I mean, this is a little bit better because technically we can set this up with other, Pokemon, but it's not a good card, so I don't know why I even mentioned it. We have Lopunny, 90 HP, jump kick, 20 damage. This attack also does 20 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Okay, so now we're talking here. 20 and 20 is actually pretty good. Now, you are forced to do 20 to the active and 20 to a benched Pokemon. So if our opponent doesn't have a benched Pokemon, this attack is pretty bad, but it's 90 HP. This card is actually kind of decent. I actually quite like it. 1 energy, which means even late in the game, if we needed to just take a KO and snipe, we could, just because it's 1 energy. It's very quick to set up. So I like Lopunny. I actually think that's a pretty good card. Next up, we have Purugly, 110 HP. Again, more colorless Pokemon. A lot of colorless Pokemon in the set. We have Interrupt. For 3 colorless energy, 60 damage. Your opponent reveals their hand. Choose a card you find there and shuffle it into their deck. So a very interesting control card here. I don't think it's going to be that good. Again, these sort of hand disruption cards and control cards aren't very good in Pokemon Pocket because most of the time people aren't just kind of chilling with a bunch of cards in their hand. They're just not. They're kind of playing the cards as they draw into them. So for that reason, that's why red card isn't that good, and also why I think this card wouldn't be that good. On paper, it's a strong effect, but in Pokemon Pocket, it's really just not that strong. In my opinion, Chatot, a new Chatot, another one here. Fury Attack, 20 damage, flip 3 coins, does 30 damage for each heads. So, could be crazy. Could be terrible, Again, so much coin flipping. It's crazy. I think people in general are going to be a little bit upset by how much coin flipping is in the set, but the thing is, most of the Pokemon that flip coins just aren't good, so they're not going to see play. Fan Rotom, 80 HP, Spin Storm, flip a coin if heads, put your opponent's active Pokemon in their hand. So this is kind of a very small version of, or a worse version rather, I guess, of Aerodactyl, the non-EX one from Genetic Apex. which I think had 2 or 3 energies in its attack cost, but it put their opponent's Pokemon into their deck. I believe shuffled it into their deck, which is a little bit better, but Fan Rotom is actually kind of interesting. Like, for big setup mons, like, or Pokemon that are stage 2 evolutions, the fact that we can just shuffle it into their deck is actually really funny, and this card, it could be, literally, this card could be extremely good in a lot of different decks. I don't know, though. Like I said, it's coin flip, so it's inconsistent, but as sort of a trump card to say, hey, listen, I know you have, you know, your Charizard set up with 6 energies onto it. I'm just gonna go ahead and try my luck here with Spinstorm and just get that thing out of here. So that could be funny. Again, because it's going into their hand, this isn't a very good card. Although if you're putting a Pokemon from their active position into their hand, it's going to discard all of the energy. So really, any Pokemon that has a bunch of energies that's fully set up, Rotom is going to be useful. This card is not bad. I think it's a little bit situational, but it's certainly not a bad card whatsoever. We are approaching 50 minutes. We're going to hustle really quick here. Regigigas, 140 HP basic Pokemon. That's crazy. 4 colorless energy. Its attack costs 50 damage. This attack does more damage equal to the damage this Pokemon has onto it. So it's not bad, honestly, but again, because we're reliant on people attacking us first, it feels a little bit bad. But again, with Giant Cape, it's 160 HP. We're living on an attack from basically anything in the game. So, or most things in the game rather. So yeah, even if we get this thing set up and we just kind of throw it in the active spot and we just tell our opponent to attack it, it's actually not that terrible as sort of a late game trump card option. But again, gusting does, is a thing. Cyrus is a thing. Sabrina's a thing. This card doesn't like those gust cards whatsoever. So I like Regigigas, but again, I just don't think it's that great. I think it's a little bit underwhelming. So yeah, a lot of the cards that we've taken a look at so far are a little bit underwhelming. I'm not going to go at all of the alternate arts, but like here are all of the rainbow rares, the full arts, the immersive cards, the crown rarity cards, the full arts here. So the artwork in this set is absolutely incredible, but we have some trainer cards that we've yet to see to take a look at. So let's take a look. We also have Skull Fossil and Armor Fossil for the fossil Pokemon. Not going to take a look at those, but more fossils for those. Next, let's take a look at Pokemon Communication, which is literally, in my opinion, one of the most interesting cards in the entire game right now. Incredibly good for us to get a card like this. So it's an item card. Choose a Pokemon in your hand and switch it with a random Pokemon in your deck. So this might not seem very good, but basically what it does is it guarantees that we trade a Pokemon in our hand for a different Pokemon than the one that's in our hand, right? So if we're basically, this card is going to be really good in most decks that are running evolution Pokemon, but it also is going to make decks that aren't running multiple copies of a bunch of Pokemon even better. Like, let's just say we are playing Dialga and we're playing, Lickilicky, we're playing Tauros, we're playing Skarmory, we're playing Mew EX, we're playing a whole bunch of different copies of Pokemon, and even though we might be playing only one copy of all of those Pokemon, basically we can kind of increase the odds of finding those Pokemon by playing our Pokeballs, our research, and our Pokemon Communication. So it's just another way to find the Pokemon in your deck that you need. Again, we can also use it to search for evolution Pokemon. So I really like this card. Again, we can kind of limit the cards in our deck to make it very specific, that no matter what, we're able to find at least, or have a really good chance to find a specific card that we want. So this is going to add a lot of sequencing in a lot of scenarios to our gameplay. It's going to very much further increase the skill gap in the order of sequences that we do when we play all of our draw support cards, especially like in decks, like Psychic decks, where we have Pokeball, we have Research, we have Mythical Slab. If now we have Pokemon Communication, like the correct sequence of playing cards is going to be very complex, and it's going to have a very high skill gap in this game. It's basically going to make decks a little bit more consistent if played correctly, but also like a little bit less consistent if played incorrectly. So this card is really fun, but I'm actually really excited for it because, again, it adds a lot more nuance to the game and a lot of opportunities to play the game properly, increasing our odds to do the things that we want to do with our decks. So I really like Pokemon Communications. I think it's going to be a staple and basically most decks in the game. We've already taken a look at the tool cards. We know new tool cards, so Giant Cape, Rocky Helmet, and Lumberry. That's all we've got for tool cards. We also have Cyrus, and we also have Volkner that we've already seen already, and Cynthia. So here are the new ones. We have Team Galactic Grunt. So these are all supporter cards we're going to take a look at here. Put one random Glameow, Stunky, or Krogunk from your hand into your deck. So very specific for sure, but in decks maybe where we're running Glameow, maybe we're running Krogunk or Stunky, like if we're playing any of those types of decks, this card is going to be good, of course, for that. It's going to be very good for that. But overall, I don't think it's gonna see a lot of play. I don't know. interesting. I didn't think Glameow or Stunky or Krogunk were all like very good cards in their own right. So yeah, I don't know. It is what it is. It's a super random card. But next we have Dawn. So we get to move in energy from one of our bench Pokemon to your active Pokemon. This is a energy switch or energy. Yeah, I think it's called energy switch in the official card game. In the OCG though, it's a item card, not a supporter card, which makes me kind of feel like this is a little bit underwhelming, but it is really, really good. The first thing that I thought of personally in with this card was something like Infernape, which again discards all of its energies but attacks for 2 energies. Basically, like every other turn, we can, if we have Pokemon on our bench with energies, we can play Dawn, we can move an energy to Infernape and then attach to it. So basically we can attack turn after turn with Infernape. That is important to note. So there are scenarios where being able to move an energy from your bench Pokemon to your active Pokemon is really, really good. In water type decks though, we already have Vaporeon to do that. So not that big of a deal. In electric type decks, we also have Lieutenant Surge, things like that. But this is a very good card. I think it's good that we have it in the metagame. I can't think of too many specific scenarios where a card like this is going to make its way into a 20 card deck list. Infernape is one example that I have off the top of my head, but it's important to have a card like this because it is going to have certain synergies in the game that I think are really, really important. I haven't kind of crunched out all of the different decks where Dawn is going to be useful in, but I do think that it's going to be a really good inclusion in Pokemon Pocket. So it's a good card. It is a good card. I just don't know all of the scenarios in which it's going to be played, at least just yet. And then lastly, we have Mars. Your opponent shuffles their hand into their deck and draws a card for each of their remaining points to win. Okay, so on paper, this card seems really, really good, and I don't think it's a terrible card, but here's the thing. Similar to Red Card, which is always, I think, 3, right? I think Red Card always puts your opponent to having 3 cards in their hand. Yes, technically, Mars does the same thing early in the game, but let's just say your opponent has taken 2 points, and for some reason they have a massive, hand size. Yes, you can bring them down to only 1 card in their hand, but like the thing with Pocket is, like I said, when you draw cards, you play them on your turn. Like you're never just kind of chilling, especially late in the game with a bunch of cards in your hand that are useful, but you haven't played them yet. Technically, like, yes, like if they're banking on like a Sabrina or a Cyrus to win the game and they've had it in their hand for a few turns, Mars can be disruptive to that degree, but they probably already have a situation or a board state set up to where they're just going to win the game anyway. Again, most of the time, people aren't reliant on cards that are in their hand on turn 5, 6, 7, or 8, or whatever it is, for them to win the game. It just doesn't necessarily go like that. Like, yes, they could be hoping to draw into like a Giovanni or waiting to play Giovanni, but like, the thing is, if they're waiting to play the card, they probably already played it. You know what I mean? Like, they're not just sort of sitting there with cards in their hand that are really important for them to win the game. Pokemon Pocket just doesn't really work like that. The games are also really short. So, I don't know. I don't think that Mars is exceptionally a great card, especially like when you think about the fact that we only have 20 cards in our deck. So are we really like, if we're not playing Red Card, are we also playing Mars? Like there are some scenarios where control decks and, disruptive decks like hand disruption decks that do play Red Card could also play Mars. And again, I think it could be an interesting control archetype that this card could be useful in. But in general, from a general perspective, I don't think we're playing Mars in our decks most of the time. I just don't think it's providing value to the degree that we really would want it to, just because of the nature of how Pokemon Pocket is and how the game and how the gameplay all works together. So there it is, guys. Another extremely long video, and again, I apologize, but we have so many cards to take a look at, and I just wanted to at least upload some version of all of my thoughts and, collective ideas about all of these new cards into videos. It ended up getting broken up into 3 videos. Maybe that was sort of a better thing. This video is literally an hour long as I record this, which again, I apologize for. The last video was also like an hour long. But yeah, 3 different videos. Go check them all out if you want all of my thoughts. Tonight, the new expansion comes out. So tonight at 1 a.m., basically 1 a.m. tomorrow morning, the Spacetime Smackdown expansion releases where the packs come out. All of the new missions and stuff come out. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to stay up for the release. I'm probably going to open like a lot of packs. I think I'm probably going to open somewhere around 200 packs on the first night. And we're going to see if we can get basically all the cards that we need to get for us to build a bunch of decks. And then we're going to immediately go into doing a bunch of really interesting deck profile videos where I'm showcasing what I believe to be the best decks for all of this, whether that be Dialga decks or Weavile decks. So definitely stay tuned for all of those videos. And then as time goes on, as tournaments come out, as we sort of see how the metagame evolves, you really got to stay tuned, because what we're going to do is we're going to calculate all of the data, we're going to analyze all the matchups and analyze the metagame, and we are going to figure out what the best decks are to play, and that's what you want to stay tuned for. So if you want to stay informed on the metagame as it develops here over the next few weeks, definitely like the video and subscribe. Again, I really do apologize for this video being so long. I don't know if I'll do timestamps. Maybe I'll do timestamps in this video. We'll have to see. But anyway, guys, I'm going to get out of here. Peace out. Have a good one. Join the Discord server for sure. If you're not in the Discord, definitely join the Discord. But anyway, have a good one, guys. We'll see you guys next time. Peace out.